So the building industry in general is quite slow to change. We've touched on a lot about sustainability, but where do you see the future of sustainable building going?
I'm going to do a dirty trick. I'm going to pass that to Nick.
That's the first time you've done that.
Sorry. Sorry to Adam, sorry.
I'd like to think that it will be something that people think about from the beginning and becomes an important factor in decision-making process. I think that's happening. What I'd like to be able to do is to think that have an optimistic view that we will carry on, designing interesting buildings that architecture will still, enliven people's lives, and that the sustainability factor will kind of be critically important. But actually, you won't have to feel like you've got to wear it, out there on your sleeve. It's taken as as fact. That's what it is. In a way, it's quite interesting. A few years ago, cars, EV cars, everybody was coming out with these amazing, funky designs for driving an electric car. The BMW i3 and the i8, which depending on the viewpoint, great or not. But now they look like normal cars, which is kind of boring in a way. But it's a positive sign in that people are able to kind of just accept it, and it's the way the future's going, and I think that's what needs to happen.
That is a positive thing to a degree.
Yeah,
whilst
exactly.
There's a modernity to it, I suppose. Using that as an example, yes, I suppose it was Emperor's New Clothes to begin with in terms of EV technology. Now we're knowing, because we're being forced to do that, we know that we've got to do something. There is this reaction. I suppose where we're coming from, we have to be seen to be proactive. We'd like to think that we're proactive about these things. So it's going to be very much a norm, in answer to your question. In terms of the way, how do we see it developing? I think that's a very difficult difficult question to answer, because and with the material resource, with the climate change, are we going to end up building a lot more beneath the ground? You mentioned basements earlier. Are we going to do that as a race? I can't see that it's going to be something that actually happens. There's a population aspect that needs to be factored into this. What their needs are going to be. Do we get to a point where we evolve and can deal with the changes in temperature to a certain degree? Evolution is a wonderful thing, but that takes time. It takes a long time. So we have to adapt, and we are adapting as it stands at the moment. As designers, we are realising that we need to ensure that the buildings are as sustainable as they possibly can be, with the palette of materials, technology that's available in front of us. We're only as good as the manufacturers with their technology as well. Once upon a time, architects were utilising airplane technology in some of their designs. Well, actually, technology is caught up with that level of thinking to a degree, where they're thinking a bit further afield, out of the box slightly, and we're introducing that. But it has to be tried and tested, of course. Whether the home as a house type changes, I don't think so. Going back to what we were saying earlier with affordable housing or council housing, we prefer brick and block. Some of those landlords prefer brick and block. If you're talking about shared ownership, you've got to consider the mortgage lenders that are going to lend them the money to purchase that house, and they seem to be favoured to want to have a masonry form of construction over and above anything that may be unique. Because all the way through this, there has to be that factor of safety. There has to be a level of assurance to be able to accept it, to be able to sign off on it, to be able to provide funding, loans for it, for them to live in it. So if there is going to be a change, there has to be quite a significant change that happens quite quickly, rather than it being a slow process.
At the risk of slightly contradicting myself here, I think what I've sort of really excited about is the opportunity to think about sustainable issues as being a way of actually maybe slightly changing the way, buildings are built, and just thinking about providing, something that's more exciting, interesting, and actually that principle being accepted as an approach. I think there is still an awful lot of people, sort of challenges that you can face in planning terms about, sticking with the status quo and, particular, styles or solutions to ways things are being done, and actually thinking about, well, no, for hundreds of years things have always been the same, the climate, and things aren't changing, but things are starting to change now, and we need to think about how our buildings adapt to this changing climate. And also just the fact that we can't just keep extracting things from the earth. We've got to actually think about redoing it. So it's a fantastic opportunity to do something, that's thinking a little bit, outside the box, which is a real opportunity. But what you're saying about, the way things have always been and what people like, I think you realise now, I think the 60s was a sort of a real realisation that people still want, the same traditional things, and that's not going to change significantly.
But it will have to change.
It will change slightly.
Yeah, but it will, at some point it will have to change, and it's the planning system. Well, again, another topic of conversation here.
Yes.
Whilst certain things sit comfortably within a certain borough or district, that often gets accepted over something that may be quite innovative in design, in terms of its creative design. Invariably with the creative design, that's when boundaries are being pushed in using new technologies in material use. But the planning authority either do not have the control over that, because they're also having to adhere to certain policies as well. So therefore there's a reluctance to accept that. As a consequence, you've got the situation where house owners wanting to have something that is relatively traditional. There is a minority that's creeping out from that realise something needs to be done about it. But that goes back to what we were saying earlier again, which is the generational thing. I think the younger generation, once upon a time everyone bought a home by going in and tapping on walls. People are buying homes now online. No way would I think that would be accepted by any means. But as a result of going in, they are looking deeper into the terms and conditions of what may or not be allowed within that building in terms of development, what has been installed in that building, its energy efficiency, its EPC, whether there's the A grade dishwasher or whatever it may be. So there is, as people are getting older, as the education is catching up with this, then they are starting to realise there needs to be change. And as designers, obviously, we have a responsibility to help that
change
forward.
In the right direction.
Yeah, we need to steer it in the right direction. And you as manufacturers need to either support us with providing whatever material it is that demonstrates that, or pushes it further and actually grabs us by the collar and say, look, we've manufactured this block over here, we've done it so well that it's the cost is equivalent to, use it. Inform your client, inform your developer if it's design and build that this can be used.
From a manufacturer's point of view, we will continue to invest and research innovation within our blocks, because it's our point of differential against our competition in some respects. In the nicest way, we continue to be competitive with our other manufacturers through our specification, our quality, our service, and so on. Sustainability is the next lever that's going to be used within the market. So for us to be competitive now, not only have we got to have the best block in regards to fit, finish, specification, accreditation, and so on, the next one now will be, and what are your sustainable values? Because we're all trying to get there, so we're all competing against each other to do that. So we can sit there and go, no, I can deliver you a sustainable block. This is what you need to use. You don't need, and in some respects, to defend against the off-site manufacturing by saying that's not as sustainable as using traditional block now. No, we are competing not only within our own category, but against other categories trying to move into our area. And sustainability is going to be one of those key battlefields in going forward. And we need to innovate, otherwise you're going to fall backwards. So,
well, it's going to percolate to the top.
Yeah.
It's going to have to, because this shift needs to take place.
So from our point of view, we're committed to it. We have, and we'll always do. We've always been at the forefront of innovation and trying to get those done. That's the next stage. That is where we continue. But we've got to do it not as a compromise. Well, the one thing we can't do is say we've got a sustainable product, but to get that, you've got to compromise on this rating, that standard, that specification. You can't have that. That's now where we are. We now need to add this to it, not give you a compromise, because you just sit there and go, well, that's not what we want.
But we're always, with every decision-making process that we go through in terms of product selection, there is always a balance that has to be weighed up.